Hello everyone, it's David from Automotive Press. As you guys know, compact SUV market is fiercely competitive with many models. And you know what? They're all competing for the same audience. But there is one model I feel is quite unique and it's actually trying to be very different, and that is the Range Rover Evoque. It's not trying to be like a BMW X1 or Lexus NX. It's trying to be unique and independent because of the way they engineered and manufactured and designed this vehicle. So let me give you 5 reasons why I feel the Range Rover Evoque is one of a kind and is unique among many compact SUVs. Let's go. Welcome back. So Range Rover Evoque is competing with the likes of BMW X1, Audi Q3s, and if you go on the Japanese side, obviously we have a Lexus NX. But why is it different? Well, for one thing, the design is very unique, and this is something you should be aware because Evoque way back when the first generation came about, it kind of hit the market with a big wow. A lot of people didn't expect compact SUV from Range Rover to make any difference in the market, but that first generation Evoque really made a difference because design was so beautiful and so unique that many other automakers took a notice and said, okay, maybe even in a compact SUV, people might actually want something fashionable and trendy and not always look for the most amount of space or the best fuel efficiency. And ever since that time, the Evoque has evolved many times, and this is the latest iteration, but it is still holding very much true to this notion that fashion and design can sometimes be more important than practicality or functionality for right kind of buyers. So for example, this particular Evoque has kind of this bronze coloring on top and over here as well. You can see bronze here, you can see bronze over here. And who else would come up with a design like this where you have the whole roof in this beautiful bronze accent and then throughout the vehicle and also inside as well. I mean, if you didn't know any better and you just looked at this vehicle from, let's say, some distance away, you would think this is a new concept car that just came out. Now, most of you guys know this is Evoque because this design is familiar now. But if you didn't know any better, honestly, it looks like it came straight out of Auto Show with a beautiful design inside and out. And that is the first thing I want to point out, is the fact that Range Rover is not scared to come up with something unique and beautiful, even if that means compromising practicality at some point, because the whole point of this Evoque and the purpose of this Evoque is different from many other compact SUVs out there. The second thing I want to point out is the fact that engineering behind the Evoque is also a little bit unique and different. So for example, Range Rover is the first company that came up with this idea, but the actual hood goes over the front fender. So you can see this one kind of goes over this. And so I can't really measure the gap because this front fender here, if you look at it carefully, it kind of goes this way, and then the front hood goes over like this. And that design allows for a much cleaner look. And even though there is a gap, I can't really measure it because the actual gap is embedded inside. Compared to most design, where the front hood and the front fender meets like this, butt to butt, and you can measure and see the gap. So if it's not done correctly, it's going to be obvious. But they were very clever to do this. And only now some automakers are copying this design. For example, even Lexus GX has the sort of hood over the fender design. So that's something really unique. And then also another thing is that this hood actually carries over all the way to this edge right here, but Range Rover designers put this trim here starting halfway through the hood. I mean, who would normally do that, right? Because it looks odd, but it looks beautiful the way they executed this. And also it mitigates the whole problem with a gap, because there is a gap over here, but it's not noticeable because you have a black trim that runs all the way through to the front door here. So that's again very unique. Clever engineering. Having said all that, the gap is actually quite good. It's only 3.5 millimeter there, and 3.3 millimeter here, and about 3.3 also millimeters. So actually gaps are very good, and all these creases line up. Most engineers don't like having these creases because it's so hard to match them up in manufacturing. But Range Rover and Land Rover, which is a parent company, wasn't afraid to do this, and they built all this crease in and everything lines up. The paint job also looks beautiful. I love this kind of bluish green color, kind of aqua blue color combined with the bronze. Again, this combination is just absolutely amazing. But in terms of just pure engineering, they got it figured out. You know, the hood design, also right here in the C pillar, it's the same glass treatment. So So this whole thing looks like it's glass, but there's actually a C pillar right here, and there's also a D pillar right here. So A, B, C, and D, but you can't tell because the whole thing looks like one piece of glass. Again, very clever engineering. And then finally, right here on the top, you got the bronze roof line here, come through to the spoiler. But this spoiler is actually split in half, so it's actually way bigger than it is. But by changing the color, this part looks like it's floating along with the roof. But if you see closer, then of course the actual functional spoiler goes way over here and it's deeper and bigger. But they didn't want to show the bronze color over here because it'll look bulky. So those kind of stuff is smart. The rear tail lamp as well starts all the way through from the rear quarter panel, starts from here, and then once again, therefore I can't really measure the gap here, and it looks all integrated all the way through. So beautiful design, I love it, a very clever engineering overall. The third point is about manufacturing quality. I just talked about that right now in terms of gap, but what I want to point out is that this thing is built in Halewood plant in Halewood in UK, and I have been to that plant along with many other Jaguar Land Rover plants in UK, and I can tell you that it's one of the most efficient and one of the best quality plants that I've seen, and they have a really good workforce there. But more than that, the actual manufacturing practices in terms of what we call lean manufacturing and agile thinking have been implemented a number of years ago. And so I can really see the fruit of that work in terms of quality of paint, in terms of overall fit and finish. Looks absolutely fantastic. Now let's take a look inside to see how the manufacturing quality is. So now I'm inside the vehicle, and let's take a look at the fit and finish and also use of materials. You can see that everything is soft material. Many vehicles these days, even Lexus, are using hard plastic, but this is super soft texture, soft here, soft here, soft here, even here is soft. So the choice of materials is fantastic, and the whole thing looks beautiful. It's very simple, but I think it's more functional than something like a Tesla, just because I still have lots of buttons in the steering wheel, whereas in something like a Tesla, they moved everything into the infotainment system, but also removed all these stalks. So that doesn't make any sense to me from an engineer perspective. And I will say overall, the quality looks really good. All the plastic fits well. But more than that, the engineering behind it, like I said, is really unique, just because this is all kind of wood panel instead of glossy black. The glossy black is over here. And then just a small drive selector here, big cup holders, and just the design is just amazing when you look at it. And the quality control looks really good so far. So I give kudos to Range Rover for designing an Evoque in such a way that it creates this kind of ambience that's open and airy, but also from what I can gather, it looks like it's all well made. So now I'm driving the Evoque, which brings me to the fourth thing. And once again, this is an interesting engineering approach and maybe even a marketing approach by Range Rover. And that is not to position the Evoque as the most practical, most functional, the biggest, the roomiest, or the most efficient compact SUV out there. They're basically saying this is a beautiful compact SUV with an amazing design, trendy look, and we're going to make sure that this vehicle is fun to drive as opposed to more of an off-roader like some of its siblings, such as the larger Range Rover or Range Rover Sport. So what they decided to do is, hey, this one doesn't have to be a true off-roader, although it is capable of doing that. Let's make it as beautiful and as fashionable as possible, and let's make it fun to drive. So even though the 2-liter Turbo 4 isn't all that powerful, it is actually designed to be quite peppy, and it feels pretty peppy, 0 to 60 in about 7 seconds or so. And it feels smooth, and the steering feedback is actually surprisingly good. I get good communicative feel from a steering. The cornering is quite good, and there is a kind of direct feel between the steering and the road that I don't get in many other compact SUVs. Even BMWs these days have a bit of a numb steering with very little feedback, because I drove the X1 recently. And if you compare to something like a Lexus NX, even more so, because that thing is very quiet and comfortable and refined, but honestly not fun to drive. Compared to this one, which has that tactile feel with a quick steering that I can move left to the right, and I feel like I'm actually driving something that deserves to be called fun to drive. It's obviously not a sports car by any means, and the steering is still a little bit numb compared to, let's say, a Porsche Macan, which is bigger and more expensive, but it gives you enough of a feedback that I can say it's more fun to drive than other mainstream luxury SUV. So that's the direction that Range Rover decided to take Make it fun, make it fashionable, make it interesting and unique, and try not to compete with those brands that are offering the most amount of space or the most value or the most practicality. That is not in the equation here. This is a different kind of compact SUV for a different kind of audience. The fifth and last point I want to talk about while I'm driving this Evoque is the fact that this is a Range Rover after all. Yes, it's an affordable vehicle, priced very attractively, but you get the big Range Rover name right in the front. So if you want a bit of a bragging right and say that you own a Range Rover, well, this is the one way of doing it because it is the most affordable Range Rover. Now, you don't get the same kind of mystique and the same kind of profile as the larger and much more expensive Range Rover or the Range Rover Sport, but you still have the brand. And I feel like it's enough of a differentiation factor that people might say, hey, for the same price, instead of buying a BMW X1, I want something with a Range Rover name because it's something unique and it has a strong brand recognition. So I feel like that's a very unique positioning that Range Rover is able to do that no other brands is able to do in this kind of European-based marketplace, just because no one else has been able to elevate the brand to that level. Even though we all respect other European brands like BMWs and Audis and maybe even Alfa Romeo because it is also unique, but when it comes to just telling your neighbor or your friend, what did you buy recently, and you say, I bought a Range Rover, well, that might be enough to say that this Evoque provides a different kind of feel, different kind of ownership experience. Once again, because of such a strong recognition in that name. And that's something that Japanese struggle a little bit still when it comes to their own domestic market. In Japan, the Lexus not as respected as many other European brands. And in Japan, you'll see more Range Rover than you expect just because they really like the brand. And that is something that will take a long time for Japanese brands to catch up because European brands have had a head start. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed my videos about the Range Rover Evoque. I would still say that the long-term reliability could be an issue, probably will be an issue. So I'm not sure if I will keep this car for 10 years or longer. It's probably not that kind of a car. But if you're leasing it or financing it for 3 to 5 years, it's probably a perfect car. That's fashionable, trendy, fun to drive, and very different with a strong brand recognition. And that is the reason why you buy the Evoque and not, let's say, Lexus NX. But if you want to buy a car and keep it for 10, 20 years and you don't want to have any problems whatsoever, then maybe you want to stick with a Lexus just because we know that's proven and it's going to be reliable. I think this SUV is well built, it looks fine, but long term is still a little bit questionable, although I will argue that Range Rover Evoque is probably more reliable than other models just because the Hellwood manufacturing plant is actually a plant with a lot of lean manufacturing methodologies implemented. If you enjoyed my video, give me a thumbs up, make some comments, and if you haven't done so yet, would you kindly subscribe as well. Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.